This is a lot of skirt. Hello friends! It's officially here! The actual gown part of my 1860s transformation gown! I was originally going to start off with the day bodice, but the bodice and I are currently not speaking to each other, so instead, I will make the skirt. Starting the skirt for me was very intimidating, as this is the part of the project which takes the most fabric. In other words, if I screw this up, there is no do-over. So my original plan was to use the same pattern I had used to make my over petticoat. I had, after all, used the skirt pattern from the Victorian dressmaker to draft the petticoat. Ha! For more complicated and curvy pieces I take from gridded books, I will create paper patterns. However, for these giant skirt panels, I prefer not to wrestle with tape and paper since I have had a low success rate with them. Therefore, I will measure out the square parts onto the fabric and then play connect the dots to get the diagonal lines. So after quite a bit of drawing onto grid paper and double-checking all my measurements, because Isabella Pitcher of Prior Attire, who is the author of the Victorian Dressmaker, is about 10 inches smaller in the waist than I am, I was finally ready to start cutting out my panels. Okay guys, real talk here. This video has taken me almost a month. It has deleted on me twice, and I at this point hate it. Hate it. Anyway, I think the next video will probably have something to do with mental health because mine's currently in the toilet. But anyway. This is silk. It was advertised as silk taffeta on fabric.com. And I got it for $8 and change per yard American. First I did the back panel, which was a square, and therefore the easiest. This one was done in my bedroom. The rest had to wait until I had access to the dining room table, as everything's a little more complicated once you add in angles. Once I got into the groove, however, it wasn't too bad. After cutting the back panel, I had very stupidly left my good quilting ruler on my bed, and then I knelt on it and broke it, so I had to use a meter stick. It's longer, but not as good at getting right angles squared. The biggest challenge for me while cutting was making sure that I cut out each of the 3 side panels, because there is a front panel, a side front panel, a side panel, and a side back panel. It is, after all, a very full skirt. I had to cut them so that the fabric would be the right way out, and that meant cutting each panel independently, as cutting double just seemed like a recipe for disaster, or at the very least wasted fabric. With all the panels cut, it was time to get to assembling. Step 1 was adding the placket to the back panel. With a little bit of measuring, I bit the bullet and cut that placket opening in the middle of the back panel. I confidently moved forward with sewing in the placket, only to realize that I had not sewed with right sides together. I sewed the placket on so that it was inside out. So then I picked out the placket and consulted with the Vogue New Book for Better Sewing and the Victorian Dressmaker before I moved forward again. Luckily, I was able to find some instructions that made it much easier to understand exactly how a placket works, and I successfully got to work on sewing the placket in again, this time correctly. With the placket attached, I moved on to the long side seams. This was mostly just a lot of pinning and sewing and pinning and sewing and pinning and sewing, and trying to make sure that I had all the panels in the right position. I had very smartly labeled each section once it was cut out, and I would highly recommend doing the same if you ever try this, because it saved me a huge headache.
As I pinned, I realized that I had only measured the width on my back panel and hadn't adjusted the length, which definitely needed adjusting. As we've previously discussed, I am not that tall. So I cut a 6-inch piece off the back of it, which I was able to use later for the waistband, but I will get to the waistband in a little bit. Anyway, so with all of the sections sewn together, it finally looked roughly like a skirt. A giant skirt. So to make it actually fit, I started with the Cartridge pleats, which are sometimes called gauging, in the back panel on either side of the placket. They give beautiful volume and shape to this sweeping skirt. I was a little sad that I couldn't use the hack of following a plaid pattern to help me measure out the cartridge pleats, but the measuring itself wasn't as bad as I was worried it would be, and for those noticing a theme, measuring is not my best friend. I used my Chaco liner. Chaco liner? That makes it sound like something to eat. Anyway, I used that thing for marking. Everyone recommends that you use buttonhole twist thread to make these because it's thicker and stronger, but none of the tutorials I found mentioned that you could still see the thread when you were finished with it, so you're going to have to excuse my pink thread on blue skirt look. I couldn't find any darker colors, and I hadn't yet figured out that was going to be a problem. So with all of the pleats marked out, it didn't take me very long to run a running stitch through the marks and then draw up the back panel of the skirt. From there, I tied them off and moved on to the rest of the pleats. The pattern that I've been following from the Victorian dressmaker called for knife pleats all around the outside, and recommended using them to hide the seams where the panels are joined. Those went together pretty since I pretty much just eyeballed them. With all of the pleats in, I was ready to start my waistband. As I said earlier, I used the end of my back panel for the waistband. I may have teetered a little bit off the historical accuracy in this part, as I know that waistbands in the time period were usually quite thin because there was so much emphasis on not adding bulk to the waist. But for whatever reason, my waistbands always end up quite thick. Not like thick from my body, but like high up and down. It is definitely something I need to work on a little bit more.
Okay, so I have managed to stitch this on. So I did right sides together all the way around the outside, and now I'm going to flip it to the inside, and somehow magically this is going to go like this, and these are going to get stitched on like so that they flip out like that. And then this part overlaps and is where, you know, I put my attachers. What are they called? Hooks and eyes and things like that. Closures. Haha, that's the word.
Then I placed the waistband on the inside of the waist and stitched the cartridge pleats to it so that they could do their cool thing and pivot to the outside. Pivot! I was amazed, and I now want to cartridge pleat all of the things. With the waistband attached, I moved on to the hem. I used this gray ribbon as a trim, and I also used it as a facing on the inside of the hem. I was originally considering trying this trim, which is from Patterns of Fashion 2, and is from the same page as the Day Bodice pattern. However, the ribbon wasn't quite wide enough, and the fabric was really fray-y, and I decided against it. Yes, fray-y is a word. And with that all done, I quickly stitched on some giant hook and eyes I'd bought especially for this.
Good morning. So, what I'm working on right now is trim. So I have all the ribbon, and I have 100 yards of it. Well, a little less because I've been playing around with it. So what's going to go around the skirt, which is of course what we're working on now, is box pleats. So I have my reference book, because what am I if I don't have references? And today we are making box pleats. So this just gives me a little guide. So what I am doing is with my handy dandy not sewing ruler, because I stepped on my quilting ruler and broke it in two because I'm a genius. Just a pencil. I'm alternating 2-inch spots with a 1-inch spot. So then I take this edge of the 2-inch spot and match it up with this edge of the 1-inch spot, which gives me a pleat on top, a pleat underneath, a pleat on top, or peaks and valleys, or however you want to refer to them. I'm going to try to not poke myself. There we go. And then I can press. Alright. So then I can eventually take the pins out. I will probably take the pins out when I pull it, when I start putting it on the skirt, because I do not want them to fall out. Or I will stitch them, but I don't want to do that because I don't think it'll look very good. Anyway, when I stitch it on the skirt, I'm going to stitch it straight down the middle. And then that will kind of ruche up the edges a little bit. So yeah, that's where we are right now. Okay, so we have made lots and lots and lots and lots of trim. So now I'm going to measure up probably about 6 inches and start attaching and pinning down my first row of trim around the bottom of the skirt. So here we go. Guys, okay, so I have, I think, done enough of the second round of trim. Oh, there we go, there's the beginning. So, iron and pin and iron and pin and iron and pin. And so I'm going to attach my second round, starting in the same, roughly the same place as I did my first round. This way. And I'm going to, I was going to do another 6 inches above, but I'm not sure now. Let's look. 6 inches puts me way up here. What about 4? 4 looks good. 4 looks good. Let's do 4. 3? Maybe 3. I think 3 might be a better idea. The problem of going up too high is that the skirt curves more there, so it will be more difficult to make the straight ribbon curve around the curve. It will happen. It's one of the reasons I've stitched it in the middle, is it can kind of twist itself a little bit at the tops and the bottoms and kind of cheat around, but I don't want to push that too far. It's going to be really obvious.
And bingo! The skirt was done. And with the trim in place, that is all there is to the making of my skirt. I'm going to be honest with you, I absolutely adore it, and I've been tempted at least twice to just put it on and parade around the house. Sadly, though, my house was built in the 1960s and contains 8 people and all of their associated belongings, so I can't really parade so much as stand in the one open space I have and make do. None of those little factors take away from the glory of this skirt. All the yardage and the cartridge pleats giving all that beautiful volume in the back. Honestly, it takes my breath away.
Thank you so much for joining us. Check out the description box below for links to my other social stuff like Instagram and Facebook. If you'd like to support me in my efforts here, there's also a link for my Ko-fi account where you can make a one-time donation to the cause of keeping me in fabric. Hit the subscribe button below and also hit the notification bell so that YouTube will tell you when I next upload a video. See you soon. Bye bye.